Oops. I need to turn around. Hi, Facebook Live. Let's figure out where I can. Okay. Sorry, I'm vlogging my life. It's part of owning a consumer-facing app. Okay, cool. Okay, first I want to know what each of you do and why you're here and what's the biggest lesson, because then maybe I will talk a little bit more about those things rather than other things. So, I know you're a mentor from Capital Factory.
Yeah, Pritesh, I'm a mentor at Capital Factory. I'm here because I love, well, one, I love retail, but I love all things consumer-facing. I launched a consumer-facing business internationally, and so I'm really interested in those kinds of businesses. And then I also like, I believe it's sort of a dating app. So I know several other players in the space, and so I'm just curious as to your approach.
Cool.
My turn?
Yeah, Rob, go ahead.
Sounds good. I'm Rob. I manage the customer success team at a company called Polyacre. We are hiring if you guys are looking for work. We make real estate software. Real estate is really tricky, so there's a lot of consumer-facing issues, you might say. Although it's enterprise software, it's not a consumer app. We're getting into that space now, which is getting kind of interesting for home buyers and sellers to use the app. So my background is in consumer psychology, so this stuff's been interesting to me for a long time.
Cool. I invited Rob because he's my friend, so that's actually cool. He might actually benefit from this talk. I didn't realize that.
Hi, my name's Tim. I'm a software engineer for Dun & Bradstreet, and also developing that in my spare time.
Cool.
Just trying to learn from others.
Yes. Perfect.
We're just here to support the cause. Learn a thing or two.
Nice.
My name is Roman Gonzalez. I started a company last year called Gardenio to help people grow their own food at home.
Cool.
And so we're CPG, but we're a tech enabler. We're working on an app that helps people as they're growing. My background is in UX design, product design, stuff like that. And so the app's not live yet. We're kind of working on finding the right talent to help build it. But super interested, kind of your story. Also super interested in dating apps. Got really into it for several years. I tried to do one. It was a bad idea, and like from mine. And so yeah, super interested in the space, especially the science angle, and just your story of how you launched it.
Cool. How about the guy behind you?
I'm Chris. I run a startup called Music Firsthand. We have a live music booking app that helps businesses and individuals book live music based on their brand and lifestyle. So,
Nice.
your journey.
Cool.
My name is Angela, and I spent most of my career in consumer packaged goods, actually, doing sales marketing and kind of focusing innovation. And then I launched my own startup in consumer packaged goods, and recently sold it to my business partner. And now I'm working on a consumer-facing app to help new moms make friends. And so this is really interesting to me. I've done some research, talked to a lot of moms, and I'm kind of like working on a ton of different things and trying to figure out what's next.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Lily. I actually met your wife.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yes, I heard that you.
I have sales.
Okay, awesome. So I guess I've done a lot of things. I used to work in both Austin and Silicon Valley in tech marketing, engineering marketing, partnership manager, just various roles. So I'm also the co-organizer of a group here called Austin Startup Meetup. And so if you guys want to come and listen to pitches and maybe meet other people, entrepreneurs like yourself, or find talent or investors or mentors or whoever. I love connecting people. I'm just obsessed about connecting people. I also work for a startup called Austin Live Chat. It's an Austin-based chat website. You don't install anything, but you can create a group about anything, or start a conversation about anything, whether it's Pheramor or any of your other businesses, or just where to find a drink on Friday or coffee hour, or rock climbing friends or whatever. It's called Austin Live Chat.
Nice.
And I'm Lauren, and I'm with the Pheramor investor relations, fundraising, donor relations, which if you're in the startup space, you know that's a big deal. We're specifically looking at community engagement as well. So I'm in the social impact world and excited to help Pheramor really kind of bridge this gap.
Awesome. Well, now we all know each other. That's awesome. And I know there are actually people here tonight that want to hear what I did wrong so that you don't do it. And I will let you know. So, admittedly, I don't have a degree in building apps or scaling them. I simply have lived this for the past 6 months. And I thought, oh my gosh, I wish somebody told me a bunch of these things before I did them. And so thinking about having an event at Capital Factory, I was like, I might as well just tell my experience of the past 6 months and let you know like what worked really, really well, and I highly recommend it, and what I did that was not as smart, and you should probably avoid doing it. So let me tell you first about Pheramor. Pheramor is a science-based dating app. So I'm actually a geneticist by training. I have a PhD in molecular and human genetics, and I have way too much personality to work in a laboratory. So I started a DNA-based dating app. So scientists have actually published dozens of papers showing that you can predict who's attracted to who because of 11 genes. So the underlying biology behind it is that the more diverse your immune systems are, the more likely you are to be biologically attracted to one another. And so opposites attract is biologically true. And that's what we do on Pheramor. We're live, we're scaled. You can download it, make a profile, match with local singles, and if you want to know your physical chemistry score with local singles, you buy a genetic kit. We mail it to you, you swab your cheek, we say hashtag swab don't swipe. You mail it back to us, we sequence the 11 genes for attraction, and then you can actually see your compatibility score based on DNA with other local singles. A little bit about myself. I'm originally from New Jersey. I think that's where I get my impatience and my pushy attitude from, and I'm not apologetic about it. I think it's a good thing to have. I went to Drew University for my undergraduate degree. I majored in biology, and I was in a genetics seminar where we actually had a lecture on scientists predicting who's attracted to who because of your DNA. And I've always been a kind of weird scientist, like I like people, I like to present, and I raised my hand and I was like, Professor, can I make a geneharmony.com then, based off of this? And everyone kind of scoffed, but he was like, I mean, I guess you could. And that was 9 years ago, and I was like, one day, I'm gonna make Gene Harmony, and it's gonna be great. I didn't do it for another 9 years, and that's okay. It's actually a really good thing because at the time, 23andMe was currently shut down by the FDA. So it was a really bad time for direct-to-consumer genetic tests anyway. So this is much better of a time. And then I went to Baylor College of Medicine in Houston at the Texas Medical Center for a PhD in molecular and human genetics. My thesis was on a small RNA that I discovered in E. coli that regulated mutagenic DNA break repair. And it was pretty cool. I really liked it, but I also knew I had too much personality to be in the laboratory. And it was a really slow, monotonous life where you had to be really, really focused on one specific thing, and you had to beg the government for money every 6 months. And I was just like, gosh, this sounds terrible, I don't want to do that. And so I started to attend these events through Adventure. Adventure is a grassroots organization in the Houston Medical Center that teaches PhDs and MDs how to start companies, because we have ideas, but we've never taken any accounting in our life. We don't know what a patent is, we don't know what a C Corp or a LLC, we don't know any of that. And so Adventure puts on free workshops, free classes. They even have an accelerator program. So I pitched Pheramor at the accelerator program in December 2016 and was accepted, and I met my co-founder, Ben. Ben has a PhD in data analytics, so I bring the extroversion, the sales, the genetics, and then he brings the back-end techie data algorithms. And so we balance each other out really, really well. And so now we have a team of about 8 people. We have a full in-house app dev team. I'm going to tell you more about that and why we have that. We have a community manager, we have interns, we have 2 offices in Houston. So that's like a very, very 30,000 feet background on me. So this is my experience of how to build an app. Again, I have not authored a book on this, No one has validated this. This is just my experience. But it's more than I ever heard before I started. So I want to give you just my experience on it. I think the steps include planning, building an MVP, minimal viable product, launching that, analyzing data, and then building an MGP, which is a minimal good product, and then relaunching. So I'm going to take you through these steps. So the first step is planning. In science, I found myself saying this quote a lot, which is slow is fast and fast is slow. Because I so often would go into the laboratory and I would be like, oh, I'm just going to bang out this experiment super, super fast. It's going to be great. And I would do no planning. And I would just be like, oh, I'll get the ingredients when I need them at the time. And I always messed it up. And it always took 10 times longer than it should have because I wasn't planned and prepared and had all my stuff set out. And so I see startup life being very, very similar, whereas if you rush into it, all of a sudden you're burning cash and time and effort, and you're halfway through, why did I do this? This is a terrible idea. I did not think this through. And I think actually I'm a huge advocate for more scientists being entrepreneurs because it's all based on data and not ego and just saying this is what the experiment's showing us. So planning, building the app, I think the most important question to ask yourself is what are the minimal elements that would make it functional, but also maybe one extra thing that makes you different. So for Pheramor, I have this vision for what I see Pheramor's app being one day, and it includes at least 10 super, super unique things that no other dating app has. But for the MVP, we couldn't build all 10 of them, right? And so I was all right, we're just going to pick one. And so that one was the compatibility score. So telling you who you should go on a first date with based on your compatibility, which includes your DNA, and also, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but you also calculate your social alignment score, so based on your common interests and shared values. So this compatibility score was the one extra thing above a basic dating app that was going to make us just a little bit different. But I have so many ideas in my mind in terms of what our dating app could be one day that are nowhere in the pipeline yet. And I had to accept that. And that was that was tough because I think of Pheramor very much as the baby, right? And if I have a vision for what it needs to be and only being able to do 5% of what I think it is, it's really frustrating, but knowing that's where you need to start. That's the slow is fast, fast is slow part. So we came up with essentially a list of what are the basic functions. So it's a dating app, so we thought, you need to have a profile. We need to have a discover screen, so seeing other people's profiles. Messaging, so if you both like each other, you're gonna match, and a messaging portal will open up. Purchasing the DNA kit, because that's kind of our differentiator, and the compatibility score, definitely our differentiator. So those are these are what we need to build to have a minimal viable product. So building it. Who's going to build it? I'm a geneticist, Ben's an algorithm guy, and so we needed to figure out who was going to build it. Now, we had some options. You can, and this is, I'm going over a lot of things that are, I'm not talking about a lot of things that could be whole other lectures, such as we had funding in the meantime. So now we have money, we have funding, we have a budget, we have a tech budget, and now we have to decide who's going to build the app. So here I am. Who's going to build the app? You can outsource it to some other company in the United States. You could outsource it to some other company outside of the United States, or you could hire an in-house app dev team. Maybe there's other options, but again, this is my experience. That was what I thought my options were. And there's 4 things I think you really need to consider when you're thinking about this. And one is cost. You're a startup, cash is king. How much do you have to budget on it? How much are you allowed to spend on it? How much is wise to spend on this? Quality. So this is if this is a consumer-facing app, it's your storefront, right? This is how people are interacting with your product. So what is the quality of it? I didn't consider this part, but again, in retrospect now, the quality is also on the back end. So now I have in-house app dev team that complains to me all the time about how bad the code is, and they have to refactor it. And that's something I didn't really consider in the beginning. I was oh yeah, there's this I want the front to be pretty, but they care about the back being pretty, right? Like under the hood, I'm like, oh, I mean, as long as it looks good, and they're like, no, this is awful. So quality on both ends of the product. Language and cultural barriers. So if you are, outsourcing to somebody in another country, like that language barrier, cultural barriers may get in the way of your app getting done in time, and also being built the way you want it to be. And then time zones. So what time zone are they in? All right, and I'm just gonna surprise. We picked outsourcing outside of the United States. It was the cheapest. So I'll give you some numbers, because why not, right? So we had a quote of $50,000 to build our MVP with a company outside of the United States. We had a quote from a company inside the United States for $100,000. And so when you're a founder of a company, and one is double, you're like, yeah, I'm definitely going to go for the one that's 50% off, right? I wish I could go back in time and tell myself that the extra $50K I think would have been worth it, because the quality wasn't there, actually both on the front and the back end, but especially the back end, supposedly. I don't know how to read that stuff, but language and cultural barriers, absolutely. I mean, even in terms of like holidays, like which, different holidays in their country were really interfering with our dates that were supposed to be like really important and critical, because to us it was like the middle of the week. It wasn't like our Christmas time. So it was just like, oh gosh. And then in time zone, my poor co-founder Ben, he would stay up till 2 a.m. and wake up at 6 a.m. in order to Skype with these developers in order to get it done, and then he would sleep all day and stay up all night. And I always remember, I'll never forget the week before we launched our MVP. One night he was actually going to go to sleep, and he texted me and he was like, Brittany, I think I'm going to pass away. But what he meant to say was pass out, but English is his second language. And it was just like really accurate. I was like, Ben, please don't pass away. Like, I know it's hard, bud, but don't pass away. So yeah, the lack of quality, the language and cultural barriers, and then also the time zone differences made the promised timeline of being done at a certain time impossible. So literally nothing was ever done on time. It was always pushed back and always delayed. I think that's a cultural thing too. Here in America, we're like, no, you need to be here 30 minutes early. You know what I mean? And then their mindset, I think it was that date's flexible, And I'm like, my investors don't think it's flexible. So we're gonna need to get on the same page about that. So those were some of the things that I wish I heard as somebody who had just raised money and was like, oh my gosh, every penny spent needs to be spent correctly and perfectly. And I had two offers, one for $50K, one for $100K, and it seemed like a no-brainer that I should go for the cheaper one. And then in the long term, I was like, oh no, maybe I should have paid them more, So that's my experience with building the MVP. So once you build your MVP, you need to test it internally. So similar to an essay you may write, if you read it all the time, you may keep looking over that typo again and again and again. And so having internal testers, people come into the office, give them Domino's pizza, give them some beer, give them some soda, and just have them go through the app and then fill out a survey. And then about their experience with different parts of the app. And then also sit down with them and audio record just casual talking about how the app experience was. Because sometimes what was your favorite part about the app question may not get down to their real feelings about it. And so that's what we did. It invited 15 people into the office, different sexualities, ages, genders. They came into the office, and we had them all download the app on this thing called Test Flight, which is not the real app store. It's kind of like a tester app store. We had them go through it, and we learned a lot. We learned a lot about, we had these things, they're called badges. So if you buy your DNA kit, you get a DNA badge. And we had been talking internally about badges so often that it seemed really obvious that everyone would know what the badges were, and like no one clicked on these badges. They were like, oh, those are just weird buttons. Those are just like designs. And we were like, no, there's function behind them. Why are you not pressing them? And so that was definitely something we had to fix. There was a lot of things we had to fix even after that. But it was such a really, really important thing that at the time we were so tired because we had just built the MVP, and we were just like, we just wanted it to be like, we didn't want to proofread that essay, right? We were like, we just stayed up all night writing this, right? If I can use that analogy, we just want to submit it. And you gotta like do that last little like no, I need to proofread this. Like that's what this internal testing felt like. Like it wasn't, we were very, very sleep deprived and lonely and all of these things, and we still had to go through and like have this like really fun pizza party app dev testing, which we didn't feel like doing, but it was so important to do. And I think a lot of people will just be like, well, you know what, like we've played with it enough, it's fine, just push it, don't test it. So launching the MVP, when and where are you going to launch it? Is it going to be city by city? Is it going to be nationwide? Maybe this doesn't apply to your app or your product. For us, it kind of did. We're a dating app, right? So we had this assumption that daters would want to date each other in the same city. And so we were like, we're going to launch only in Houston. I'm going to kind of like jump ahead and tell you like what happened. So we were like, we're going to only launch in Houston because daters want to date daters. So we did that. And then once we were live, we actually, one day I came into the office and I was like, Ben, do we know that daters want to date daters in their own city, or do we just think that? And he was like, oh, I think we just think that. And I was like, we should survey them. And so we surveyed our user base, and it was something retarded, like 84% of people said, if my soulmate lives in Chicago, you better tell me. Like, I don't care. I'm not on this app to get a date tonight. I'm on this app to find real authentic connection. So I don't care where they live. And so it was like we had been running on this paradigm for well over a year that daters only want to date daters in their city, and it was not true. And once we asked the market, they were like, no, show me everybody. So always ask your customers what they want. Don't assume. Base all your decisions on data. So that sounds like it was a bad thing, right? Like we made a mistake. I also think that it was a really good thing because what was live in Houston was the MVP and not the MGP, not the minimal good product, right? And so all of the bugs that I'm about to tell you about that one day hopefully we're like madly successful and we're acquired or whatever, I can look back and be like, oh my God, I can't believe like anyone ever touched that app, like and be embarrassed by it. But I'm really grateful that we had it isolated to one city, right? And so we had the rest of the country waiting. The rest of the country hearing about Pheramor but not being able to use it or download it, which the marketing team, you know, it's not a good feeling to tell people no to a product, but it's good when the product isn't really clean yet, right? So I don't regret that we isolated it to Houston, but we're nationwide now. So we built the MGP and we're nationwide now. When you're launching your MVP, you should think about timing. So for us, we were considering what if the app was finished in December? Would we wait to launch it till after the holidays? Because again, like people on a dating app, if you're home for the holidays, you're not even in your own city sometimes, like is that a good time of year for a dating app to launch? And so what are your products? Are they dependent upon a certain time of the year to be more effective than not, right? If you're doing a fitness app, January is probably a great time to launch, right? New Year's resolutioners. But so for us, we launched on March 1st. So we tried to capitalize on the Valentine's Day hallmark of February and then end the month with our launch party. Critical mass, so that was an issue that we had, again, a dating app. Like, you need people on there for it to be effective, right? We're not a company that can only have 10 users and be useful to anyone. So that was something that we had a challenge with. And what do your users want, right? So I was talking about how it turns out they don't care what city these people they're matching with are in. So launching the MVP, we did a lot of pre-launch efforts. we did a lot of events. We did swab parties, which were pretty fun. And we sponsored music festivals like Day for Night. And, you know, now that I'm here and I'm looking back on like all the money, marketing, brand ambassadors, supplies, like all that effort, the sweat equity, like everything we put into it, like was it worth it to do all of that before the app was live in the App Store? And for the brand equity, hell yeah. Like we went to Day for Night in Houston, was December of last year, and after that weekend, anytime that I did any other event, I would say 50-50, somebody came up and was like, oh, were you at Day for Night? Or, oh, my friend saw you at Day for Night. And it was like, oh, we're validated. Like, we're a known company in the city. Like, people know who we are. And so the brand equity was, I mean, super, super valuable. Before Day for Night, no one knew who we were. We'd go to events, have our own events, and people would be like, Pheramor, who? Like, what is this? You know? And so I do see that as super, super valuable. But in terms of, we had this illusion that like all of these people that now knew who we were going to download it immediately as soon as we launched, and that was not true. And so we had this like idea that like everyone who knew us, as soon as we told them we were live, they were all going to download it, so we can just assume like 100% acquisition, all of the people who ever heard of us, and we would have thousands of users overnight. And that didn't happen. So that's totally like a geneticist gone app launcher mistake. Turns out, apparently, sales and marketing, like people have to be touched by a brand many, many a times before they even buy it or download it. So rookie moves, that's okay. So, you know, looking back, should we have spent so much money on all these parties before our app was live? Honestly, I'm not sure we should have. You know, I think we should have done events, especially, you know, Day for Night, but I'm not sure we needed to pour as much money into it as we did. And that's just something like moving forward. So like our MGP, minimal good product, we didn't have any events in Austin until that was done. And that was because when we launched the MVP and we saw how few people actually became users that saw us at Day for Night, I was like, we are not stepping foot in Austin until the MGP is done. Like not a day early, because we now have the percentages of how many people hear about us before the app is live and actually become a user. So you can make mistakes, just learn from them. That's and so we had our launch event in Houston on March 1st, 2018. We called it the Science of Love event. Picking a launch date is very, very high risk because your app might not be done by that day, and that's terrifying. I'm pretty sure our Android version was accepted like 2 hours before the event started. Like, my PhD was on studying how stress causes cancer. I'm like, yeah, oh no, it's bad. It's really bad. I know too much. This is not good. I'm really, really conflicted now with having a date now, ever setting a date for an app launch, because it was just so stressful and so high risk and like almost didn't happen. But with high risk, there's high reward, because a launch party that was focused on getting people to download our app resulted in 700 downloads in an hour, right? Like the point of the event was come and download our app. And people who signed up to come to the event were like, I'm going to go to that event and I'm going to download that app, you know? But at Day for Night, people were like, I'm here to listen to EDM music, right? And oh, what's this vendor here? And so they weren't motivated to download, right? It wasn't even available, but I'm just giving an example. Like this was an event that the purpose was come and download our app. And so the high reward was that we had a ton of downloads, which was really, really important for a dating app because we needed a good critical mass to even just start. So luckily it worked out. Ben didn't pass away. That was good. And the other thing I want to talk about for the launch party is that strategic partners are key. We had well over, I would say 600 people at the launch party. So the launch party happened at the Health Museum. The Health Museum is a super, super cool museum in Houston that nobody knows about. And they just hired new exhibitor managers and new people to try to like tell the city who they are, because they're so cool. They just bought all these new billboard ads and stuff, and that's how I saw them. And I was like, I never heard of the Health Museum. So I went over there and I was like, hey, Health Museum, I'm like, what are you up to nowadays? Like, what are you doing? Maybe we could partner. And they were like, please bring the young adults. Please. Like, we're a super cool, hip museum, and we need your young adults to come here. Would you like to have a party here? And I was like, you're letting me use your whole museum for my own party? And they were like, yes. And we'll even pay for all the marketing. And we'll print all the flyers. And we'll do Facebook ads all for you. And I was like, this is amazing. And the best partnerships are when the other people think they're the ones that are winning. And so they were, I mean, at the end of the launch party night, they were like, Pheramor, you are welcome to come whenever you want, because they had over 600 young adults in their museum, and they got really, really great content to put on their website to show, like, look how hip we are, you know? And like 600 young adults from Houston came and were like, this place is really cool, you know? And so I thought we were winning, they thought they were winning. That's the best kind of partnership. We also partnered with Kaleidoscope. It's a local nonprofit that helps promote local artists. And so we were like, hey, do your artists want to like play music at our event? Do your artists want to hang art up at our event in the museum? And they were like, yes, they do. And I was like, come on over. And so again, like they thought they were winning because they were having their own event at this museum for nothing, and I thought I was winning because now I'm also reaching their networks of people for invite and brand equity into the event. So partnerships, super, super important. Don't do it on your own. Analyzing the user activity, super, super important. Analyze. It's all about the data. Once you launch your MVP, you need to figure out, like, okay, the reason we launched an MVP is not because we're proud of it, it's because we need to collect data and make it better immediately. Like the next day, you need to start collecting data. So one of the first places you can collect data is your customer service email. So we have, info@pheramor.com. Side note, as a founder and CEO of a company, I've been customer service for the past year and a half. I just hired someone now to now take that on, but for the past year and a half, it was me who was replying, by the way. The CEO. So I got everyone's comments, questions, issues, but the customer service is a great way to take a pulse of the app. So the first month the app was live, I got an email literally almost every day complaining about somebody seeing the wrong gender on the app. So let's say, heterosexual woman looking on the app and they want to see men, but they kept seeing women. And people are irrational, they're expecting perfection, and so they would email customer service very angry, like, my DNA doesn't say I'm gay, and I'm like, wait, like, please, hold on, like, there's obviously, like, an issue, like, let's just figure it out. And what we realized, and it was like day after day, I was getting men seeing men, and women seeing all these, it was all wrong. And it was like, what is this? Why? But it's not everyone. It's also not everyone, so what's the issue? And we figured out, rookie move, when we built the app, on the sign-in screen, when you have to pick your gender, we had male default selected. Never have a default gender, ever. Everyone, if you ever make a dating app, never have a default gender. And what was happening was that people were getting confused about, they even thought maybe the selected would turn green, and then not selected was white. But some people's brains thought white was selected, even though the other green was selected. And some, people, they were just all kinds of confused, and so people were registering as the wrong gender, and then they were seeing the wrong gender, and then they were getting very upset. And so customer service is a great way to get a pulse on your app and what you need to change about it. And so the first thing we did was change the default setting to be no gender, you have to select. Again, I hope we're acquired one day for a lot of money, and we can talk about how funny it was that we had default gender. Emailing surveys, we email people so often asking for feedback, and no one ever replied, ever. And now whenever I get a survey, I'm like, I will give you all my feedback, I know how hard it is to get it, like nobody ever replies to these, I will. And so the only way we were able to get people to answer our surveys was if we offered an exchange. If they did it, we'd send them a $5 Amazon gift card. And we actually got like 30% response, which is really good for a survey thing. So, when the purpose of having an MVP is to collect data, the idea of sending other people money to just fill out 10 questions hurts the startup entrepreneur's soul. And there's also oh wait, but we literally need to this in order to move forward. Also, survey questions are an art. Definitely have somebody who makes survey questions as a job, write your survey questions, because I wrote them at first and I sent them to some like marketing people and they were like, you're essentially asking them like how much do they love it? Like, no, you can't say how much do you love it on a scale from 1 to 5. You need to say like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to recommend it to a friend? I'm like, why would I ask them about recommending it to a friend? And they're like, because then they'll tell the truth, you know? It's a whole art. Ask somebody else to help you. There's literally a science behind it. And then cold calls. So get a Google Voice number. Don't use your own number. Get a Google Voice number. And I spent days sitting on my porch with my dog, calling our customers, hundreds and hundreds of people. No one ever answered because we're in 2018 and no one answers a phone call that you don't know the number. That's fine. But I would sit there and I'd call them all. And I had like questions ready, and I'd leave a voicemail saying, hey, this is actually the founder of Pheramor. I'm just calling to see how your experience has been, but don't worry, you don't have to call me back. I'm going to follow up with a text message. And I'd hang up, and I'd immediately follow up with a text message. And so for anyone who doesn't answer numbers you don't know, you know that if they leave a voicemail, it might be important, right? So I'd leave the voicemail, and then I would follow up immediately with the text saying, hey, I just called you and left a voicemail. This is the founder, Pheramor. I just want to ask you a few questions. Would you mind? And it was actually really, it felt really good how many people were like, what? Like, you made this? And you're texting me for my opinion? And, an email people just delete, but like I was texting them, and of course I copied and pasted, but I changed their name. Like, hi, Lauren. So nice to talk to you, whatever. Like, this is the founder. Blah, blah. So I actually got a lot of responses, and people even being like, oh, well, can I call you back after work at 5? And I was like, yeah, definitely. And so some people actually even were in the Galleria in Houston, and a lot of people work in the Galleria, and they were like, can I stop by your office? And I'm like, hell yeah, you can stop by our office? Please come by, So that was another really, really great thing, and collecting all that data allowed us to build the next phase of the app. So that's like the consumer facing. That's like, again, if we're using that car analogy, like that's on the outside, right? But like what's under the hood, like how are people's activity within the app? How is that going? And so, admittedly, we were like, yeah, we're gonna monitor their activity on the app, and it's gonna be so important, it's gonna be so good. And then we launched the MVP, and we were like, how are we tracking it, and what are we tracking? We know it's important, and we know we need to do it, but we haven't wrote down the things that we want to look at and why we want to look at them and how we're going to look at them. Think about that beforehand. But very quickly, Ben and I were quick on our feet, so we were like, oh, these are the things that we need to know. We need to know like how many daily active users are there? How many times do they open the app in a day? What time are they opening it at? How many messages do they send? What are, their demographics and what zip code are they in? And so we started making this list of like, these are the things that we need to know in order to build the next best phase of this product. And then figuring out how do you monitor it as well, monitor it. So I've learned a lot about app dev, because I just all the time I'm like, hey, we can like do this, right? And the app dev team is like, please don't say that ever again. Like, you definitely can't do that. Like, and if you want that, it'll be 6 months. Oh, okay. So like learning like what we can expect and what you can't from an app dev team. So, there was like this paradigm that I'm like, oh, collecting data on an app is super easy. And turns out like you actually had to like build Firebase and like give it questions, and then even like that sometimes didn't even work, and you had to like modify it, and it was like, oh my gosh. So it was like 2 weeks before we could really start to collect data, and we built this dashboard where every day we're getting numbers and monitoring live like people's activity on the app so we can learn about it. And why is this important? It's so that you can build your MGP off of it. It's important for your investors who just gave you money, and they're like, how's it going? Right? You need to be able to be like, look at this graph on the increased activity every day. It's exponentially great, Investors want data, and you can't just be like, well, I think people are using it. Like, you need to give them data on it. And also the marketing. So we're able to track, like, if we had a Facebook ad on a certain day that targeted people in Austin, and we had, triple downloads in Austin that day, there's a certain retrospective analysis there of like, oh, hey, looks like these efforts that we're putting in here are working in the app. Or the coolest thing is when you do a push notification and you can see the spike in people opening the app when you get the push notification. That's really, it's a cool thing. Something I didn't expect was that I thought we know who our customer is. They're young people, they're 22 to 32, they're single, they're recent graduates, and we launched this app, and now we have almost 1,000 users, and we're analyzing their activity, and I start to look at their demographics a little bit, just to fancy myself, just to figure out who's on our app, and I start to realize, oh gosh, they're like a decade older than we thought. Like, the people who actually ended up downloading our app and who actually use it on a daily basis are closer to 20 to 38-year-olds. Okay, cool. And then I looked at what education and careers they were choosing in the app and putting for themselves, and turns out they were like mostly doctors and MBAs, and they had master degrees, and I was like, whoa, these are really highly educated people. And then also their careers. We had like 4 CEOs on our app. We had consultants, we had managers, we had store owners, we had doctors, people who were in positions of power. And so what we realized, Lauren actually came into the office one day and I was like, Lauren, this is happening. And she's like, they're data-driven decision makers. Of course they're gonna use a dating app that's data-driven, right? They knew what they needed to do for education, and they like went through that pipeline. They knew what they needed to do to get to the top of their company, and they went through that pipeline. And then now they're 34 and still single, and like, what the hell? Like, please give me some algorithm to find love. And here comes Pheramor, and they're on the boat, right? They're like, yes, this is what I want to use. And so why that's so important is because all of our marketing videos that we're paying for had like bros in them. And we were like, oh gosh, we have to change all of our videos to be people in suits. We need to change the jokes or the scenarios in the ads, to be targeting the people who are actually using our app. And so that was so important for, we actually have now, I just recently recalculated it, with this retargeting of our ads, we have a 82% decrease in our cost to acquire a customer, because we're not throwing money at the wrong people anymore, who we thought was our customer. We're throwing it at the people who are like only need to be touched twice in order for them to download the app. So yay, that's really great. They also really love dogs. I love this word bubble. I think it's super cool. It's one of the most commonly used words in their bios. And you can see it's like dog, love, travel, looking. Netflix was not in there, and neither was chill. And I think that says something about our demographic. So I'm building an MGP, minimal good product. So Ben, he came up with this term, and I'm like, yeah, that makes total sense. And whenever I say it, people are like, what is that? I've been building apps for years, I've never heard of that. I'm like, I think it makes a lot of sense. It means that it's a little bit better than the minimal viable product, but it still doesn't have everything you want it to have, right? And the improvements are based on data that you collected from the MVP. So we're gonna coin that, we're gonna trademark it. Just kidding, maybe, no. Base all of your improvements for the MGP off of data and not your ego. So I actually have a lot of investors that tell me like, it's really refreshing to have a PhD in genetics be the CEO of a company and not an MBA, because sometimes MBAs have this idea and the market is telling them that they don't want that idea, and they're like, no, the market just doesn't know. Like, they're in it. Whereas I am a geneticist, I don't want to waste my whole doctorate on a bad idea. I want to do a pilot experiment, and if the experiment tells me my idea sucks, I'm gonna let it go real fast. I'm gonna move on, And so for me to pivot, it's I have no, that doesn't negatively affect me. I'm very willing to pivot based on data. And so, once again, more scientists should be entrepreneurs. And so laying out your priorities. So you launched your MVP, you built your MVP, you launched it, you're collecting all this data, so now you're gonna sit down and be like, okay, what's the MGP gonna look like? So you need to figure out what you're gonna keep, you're gonna figure out what you're gonna cut, you're gonna figure out what you're gonna expand on. Once again, I'm not like an author in this, but this is how I think, looking back retrospectively, what it boiled down to. So we figured out that we wanted to keep, these are the things that people were like, yeah, I really like this is good. I like that you have this, the matching and the messaging. So both people have to like each other in order to send a message. Women really like that, so they don't get all these messages from men unsolicited, so we're good, we're gonna keep that function. We have a carousel discovery screen, so instead of swiping, it's like you have 3 profiles a day, and they just kind of rotate, and you can go through them all. And so people really like that model instead of the swiping. Pie time. So every day at 3:14 p.m. you get your new profiles. I thought of that and I was like, this is so great. And people were real nervous. They were like, pie time, are you for real? Like, that's literally the nerdiest thing I've ever heard of in my life. Like, no one's gonna get that. No one's gonna like it. And I was like, no. It's gonna be great. And literally though, every day at 3:14 we see a huge spike in activity on the app. So like people are really catching on to pie time, which I'm really excited about. I have lots of nerdy ideas that are thrown out the window, so when some are kept, I'm like, yes, yeah. Things that we need to cut. Oh yeah, this is where the like, this is funny. This is funny stuff. Photo suggestions. So there's actually a lot of data on which photos you should use to get the most right swipes on, okay? So for example, one of the studies shows that male profiles, if they have a picture of them with an animal, they're more likely to be liked, okay? And so based on all this data, I was like, Ben, we should have, you know, of the 6 photos you upload, we should actually give you suggestions for which one it should be. Like this one should be like you with the animal and you with this. That seems like common sense, right? Building a consumer-facing app, I have very limited faith in humanity anymore. So the thing that suggested that you have a picture with an animal, people are just uploading pictures of animals. And like, oh, okay, like that's okay. I mean, but some people even upload pictures of like stuffed animals, like not even real ones, like just a stuffed animal on their bed. And I'm like, this is weird. This is way opposite. Like it would have been better if nothing was there, you know? And that has backfired. Okay. So we're in the MGP, there are no photo suggestions. We're just like 6 pictures, make them appropriate. You do you. Like, so that's one of them. Another one is envelopes for mail swab back. So you buy the kit, we mail it to you in a box, and we give you swab your cheek, and then you put it in this envelope, and you mail it back to us in this envelope. One of the things was that sometimes the envelopes got lost in the mail, and people are sending in their DNA. They're nervous. Like, I mean, they're actually only sending in their spit, right? Like, it's not like their DNA is written out on some letter. Like, it's just a swab with spit on it, but nevertheless, people are nervous that their DNA is lost in the mail. That doesn't feel good, right? And we're asking them to trust us. So that kind of stuff, and it's an envelope, so we can't track it. There's no tracking. But if you had a package, you could track it. Keep that in mind. Also, when we were doing these cold calls and we were asking people about their experience, some of the questions I was asking was, hey, I see you bought a kit. What was that experience like? Did it make sense? Were the directions? Like, when it showed up to your house, did you like it? Like, what was that whole thing like? And it was interesting, something we had never ever thought of if we hadn't asked, was that everyone was like, I love your box. We have the boxes over there on the table, you can see them. You want to hold one up, Morgan? That's the box. So the box comes in the mail. And yeah, there's the box. So it comes in the mail, there's an envelope inside, and they were supposed to return it in the stamped envelope, right? And so when we asked people about their experience with this box, see online? They all said, like, it was such a nice box, I felt bad to throw it out. And so it just sat on my counter for like a week, and then I eventually threw it out. Because I was like, well, I really don't need this box on my counter for a week, you know? And so what we realized was like, hell, let's save money and have them send the box back to us. Moreover, when they send the box back to us, we'll have tracking. And so, again, the like decreased faith in humanity, we were like, are they gonna figure it out? Are they gonna be able to send back the box? Like if we put in a bag with additional stamp, like will they do? And people are doing it. And people, not only that, but they love it because we branded it in terms of like, not that we're cheap and our startup and want to save money, because that's not cute. It's cute at Capital Factory. It's not cute to the market. What's cute to the market is that we're scientists and we, love the environment and we want to save the environment. And so reusing this box is a really good way to do that. And everyone's like, yes, I am all about that too. Like that's great. And I love this box. This box, I like this box. I would love to use it again. Even if it's to mail it back to you. And I can remember a funny story. I love giving these talks because I can give like behind the scenes stories. They usually involve Ben, and then he's really mad at me for telling them. But one time, with the first ever returned box we got, when we were first talking about it, I said, Ben, I'm nervous about like people like really hurting the box. Like it's not going to look good. And I was like, and what if it smells? Like, what if it smells like cat pee or something, you know? Like, we can't reuse the box. And he was like, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. So the first box we ever got back, as soon as we got it, he opened the bag and he was like, it's fine. I was like, oh my God, that's right. I forgot I told you 2 weeks ago that it might smell bad. I like, totally forgot about that, but he was like, oh no, it's good, we can reuse it. I was like, that's great. So we now reuse our boxes, it's a really good thing. But we learned that from the asking the customers about their experience. Expanding, so certain things that we test drive and we're like, do people like this? Figured out they really, really do, so we're gonna expand on it, was everyone we asked, what is your favorite thing about Pheramor? They all said the compatibility score. That's the only reason I use your app. I want to know my compatibility score. And so we were like, let's expand it. So now we even break it down. We show you not only the overall arching compatibility score, but you can click on that and break it down into what part of that is genetics and what part of that is your common interests and shared values. And in the MGP, we even have match reports. So you can even break it down further into which genes you're most compatible on, and then which interests are you most compatible on, and which ones you aren't. And so we were like, okay, we'll give them more data. Let's do that. So we're expanding on that. Premium models, so we figured out what people were willing to pay for. They're willing to pay for more profiles per day, so that's going to be part of the premium model. They're also willing to pay for undos. I got so many emails saying like, oops, I accidentally passed somebody, like, please, 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 they're my soulmate, like, make it go back, you know, and I'm like, okay, I'll change it on the back end, but I was like, people would pay for that, you know? If you passed on your soulmate and you found out that the $5 a month premium model lets you undo, like, people are gonna pay for it. And then, dating coach, so like helping people rewrite their bios and redo their pictures. As a dating app owner, I have rewritten so many men's dating apps, like out at dinner when they're like, hey, like, can you pick my pictures? Can you redo my bio? I'm like, yes, I can, like, here. And they're like, I sound really great. I'm like, yes, you'll get more right swipes now. But, so we actually have that kind of integrated into our product. And then conclusions, this is another really funny story. One time I was giving a talk with the MVP in my hand, and I was like, yeah, and so like, let's look at this example. And I was like, oh, this person looks like we're 98% compatible on physical chemistry and only 5% compatible on social alignment. You know what that means, right? And everyone was like, I was like, oh no, we're expecting the public to critically think. That was a really bad choice. We need to tell them what it means. And so I was like, it means that we would have like really good sex, but we wouldn't get along. And everyone was like, oh my God, that's what that means? And they were like so like sold on it. Like, oh my gosh, that's what I needed. I needed that conclusion statement. Like, please don't make me think. You know, if anything, I've learned anything from building a consumer-facing app is don't make them think. Don't make them. Like, provide it. And so now we have conclusion statements. Like, oh, looks like this would be really great for you. Or like, looks like an 8-ball said probably not. You know, like, giving conclusion statements, really important. When you're building your MGP, you gotta ask who's gonna build it. So are we gonna use that overseas company again? The answer was no, we're not. So we have internal app dev team was the most financially reasonable step for us to do. New timeline, what's the new launch date, and then also budget. So now you've just spent all this money on like pre-MVP, building MVP, launching MVP, analyzing data MVP. How much money do you have left for building your MGP? You got to consider that. And where will you relaunch? If you're doing city by city, what are you going to next? If you're doing, are you just going to go nationwide? You got to consider that. So this is the new app, a lot cleaner. That's the match report. I actually think I can I? Oh, I think I can. Yeah. So it's a lot cleaner now. Let's see if I can go forward. So this is part of the match report. So you can see their overall compatibility score is the 85%, and then underneath is the conclusion statement that says, we told you to trust us, this is a great pick. And then you can see the breakdown of the physical attraction score, the social alignment score, and then we even have a graph that shows you which interests you're most compatible on based on these categories. And so more data. We also used the data from our MVP to rebrand ourselves. So Turn on Love, we thought that was really clever. Turns out no one was really moved by that. But Love is a Science, everyone was like, yeah, Love is a Science, because it is, and you're doing science, and so this really fits. So rebranding, but not entirely, because you don't want to lose the brand equity you just put all that money into, right? So it's just like a slight rebrand. And so here we are. Now here we are. We're on this relaunch, and we're scaling. So admittedly, when I was making the slide, I was like, oh no, I'm not sure I have too much advice to give because I'm in the middle of it right now. All this other stuff is like, oh, lived through it. Here's what, in retrospect, I'm like, oh wait, I don't have any retrospect for this. I'm literally midweek of it. One thing is that we did not start any on-the-ground efforts here in Austin until the MGP was made and in the App Store. I was not going to waste 1 ounce of our time or money in a city until the app was able to be downloaded there. So that was really, really important. We went to Waterloo Music Festival, had a booth there, a lot of foot traffic, a lot of brand equity there. And then Morgan and I have just been going around the city handing out swag at cafes and talking to people. Austin is very, very receptive to someone saying, hey, I'm the founder of a company. Would you want some swag from my company? You know, like Austin is super, super receptive to that. They're willing to hear you out. My dog also has a shirt. He's the best brand ambassador that ever was. His name is Trypsin, like the enzyme, because the nerdiness in me knows no end. We've been swabbing people. We're technically nationwide right now. And so it's interesting when I say, like, we're scaling to Austin, what I actually mean is that we're now spending marketing dollars in Austin, but anyone in the nation can download it. So we're no longer confining it to cities, and we're telling people no, like anyone can download it, anyone can use it, but scaling just means that we're now expanding our marketing dollars to be in 2 markets. So some final takeaways. These were the 6 steps I saw in building a consumer-facing app. It was a lot of planning, because slow is fast and fast is slow. Building an MVP. So essentially just the functions that make it what it's supposed to be, plus 1 extra thing that makes you a little bit different. Launching it, whether you decide to have a launch party, get a lot of downloads, that could be a good idea, but you better make sure your app's done. Analyzing data. Do anything and anything you can to get that data. Cold calling, text messaging, offering Amazon gift cards. Oh, I didn't even mention this. We even had singles mixers. We had singles mixers for free. We were like, just come and like mix. And they were like, free party. Like, Pheramor loves its users so much, which is totally true. And we cornered them with surveys. And we were like, please take this survey. Like, you're here and you can't leave. Like, take the survey really fast. And so anything you can to get that data. Analyzing it, building your minimal good product. Because I know the vision you have for your app is like next level, 2030, you know, kind of an app, but you got to start somewhere, and you got to start mini build so that you can test and rebuild so that you can move forward, and then relaunching. So we've never really stopped being in existence, but we've just done like a new push, a new flow of cash into a new city. So it'll take longer than you think. Yeah, it's always taken longer than I thought to build an app. Don't expect perfection. Slow is fast, fast is slow. Data, and more data. It's all about data. So those are my major remarks on that. I want to give a sincere appreciation and thank you to Capital Factory, Morgan, who's been doing a great job, Lauren, our advisor for specifically community outreach. This is like her thing. My co-founder Ben for putting up with revealing all of our in-house stories. My app dev team that worked tirelessly last week in order to get the app done. Obviously investors, board of directors. And I would be happy to take any questions while you're downloading Pheramor. Thank you.
How much have you raised?
How much have we raised? We rose a pre-seed round of... I'm actually going to turn this off. Sorry. Public. Bye.